Well, here we are. Welcome back on the AM show. We get into the big stories, and we're going to be focusing on Parliament. A lot of what is happening there to do with the Privileges Committee and those three members of Parliament who have been hauled before it, among other very pertinent matters. But before that, I'll be getting into some other substantive matters with our guests who join us, both of them via Zoom this morning. Andrew Agyapa Mercer is Member of Parliament for Sekondi. He is also a Deputy Energy Minister. Honorable Mercer, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, my good friend. How are you doing?
It's been a while. I'm doing well. How about you?
Yes, it's been a while. By His grace, I'm good. Always good to be here.
We thank the Lord for His mercies. We also have joining the conversation our second guest in the person of Alhassan Suhuyini, Member of Parliament, Tamale North. Honorable Suhuyini, a very good morning to you too. Do we have Honorable Suhuyini? You may have to unmute so we can hear you. All right, we'll get Honorable Suhuyini on. But starting with you, Andrew, it's been a while, and now we have a petition out there to Shraj, trying to get Article 71 office holders to declare their assets for the head of Shraj to instigate that. I just want to find out from you, have you declared your assets as a Member of Parliament? Have you declared your assets for this second term? Honorable Mercer,
say that indirect.
Okay. I couldn't hear you for a while, so I was just checking with your sound.
Yes, I said let me say good morning to your cherished viewers and to respond directly to your question that I suspect that if I hadn't filed my assets declaration, my name would have found its way in the publication that the Fourth Estate did a couple of weeks ago. And so to the extent that my name was not in there, it goes to confirm that indeed I duly filed my assets declaration for the accordance with law.
Andrew, you're a lawyer, and I'm asking you a direct question. You are now drawing lines between the fact that it could be that, it was not an all-encompassing list. I am asking you, have you declared your assets? That is the question. Have you declared your assets?
Yes, I have.
All right. That is a straightforward enough.
I wanted to go in that circuitous manner just so that at least you can know that indeed I have filed without necessarily responding directly. But yes, I have.
Okay. What is your take on, leadership responsibility in this regard, especially on the back of some of what we've seen? On the back of, Sir John's last testament and others, and he wouldn't be alone here. I'm sure if we did a lot of digging, would find so many things, skeletons in the closet. But
unbelievable how you put it. The basis for saying that it will not be alone in any event. Has it been established beyond all reasonable doubt that these assets were acquired within the period that he was in office as the Chief Executive of the Forestry Commission?
I'm sticking to what I know in terms of the acquisitions since 2017, at least. Prima facie, what we know.
I've seen the document. Okay? I've seen the document. Using myself as an example, I have my own property in the La area that I acquired before 2010. To date, I haven't registered it. Okay, but of course, I've declared it as part of my assets because it is indeed part of my assets. And so between now and say 2024, I am able to register it. Would you then conclude by virtue of the fact of the time of the registration that asset was acquired when I became a Deputy Minister of State? So let's wait for the investigation that the Special Prosecutor is conducting. Okay, before we draw conclusions like the one that you just did.
Andrew, I think you missed the point. I am not, I'm not passing. No, hold on. I am not passing judgment. I was actually merely drawing your attention to the fact that
I'm not holding brief for anybody.
Right.
I'm not
So two things, two quick things. If you would just listen to me, two quick things.
Some assets within the period of his being in office and established to have been illegitimate. Those questions must be answered. I don't have a problem at all. But the parallel that you sought to draw, that this may not be the case. So I think others.
you've misunderstood what I'm trying to say. That's why I'm saying just pause and let me explain to you.
But I got you very clear that you were trying to suggest that it is possible that others may have assets in the nature of what it is that Sir John has. And I'm saying that there's absolutely no basis.
So that one you got right, actually. That you got right. And I wasn't speaking about just this administration. In fact, my thinking is that, and there's been the call for the family to let, the lands minister know of whatever other properties may have been let out to whatever individuals. That is what I'm looking at. I'm not even looking at just this administration. I'm looking at across administrations and who may have done what that we don't know of. So maybe, I don't know how you understood that. But the reason I brought it up was not even to get into the detail, the fine detail, which we do not have yet. The OSP is working on that. But it has to do with the fact that what I was What I was referencing was that this conversation has come to the fore again on the back of that. That was the analogy I made. But I guess I don't know. You jumped down my throat.
I really am indifferent with respect to whether assets ought to be assets that are declared, ought to be made public or not.
But the law the law makes it clear that it isn't to be put in the public domain, but it is supposed to be submitted. It is supposed to be kept until such an instance arises where maybe there is the need for it. Then a court or another, institution of competent jurisdiction would request it. That much we are aware of.
But that's what people are kicking against. And I've heard the argument that the mode with which the Constitution requires the assets to be filed at this material time makes it really, if you like, not worth the piece of paper that it is written on, because if it's kept in the custody of the Auditor General's Department until an issue arises, then how are people going to know what it is that you own before you came into public office and what it is that you own post your exit from public office or even during your tenure in public office to then make an assessment as to whether you've acquired some assets within that period, whether legitimately or illegitimately. And so the question has been put out there that, look, to make this law biting, if you like, some public disclosures ought to be made. And I'm saying that as far as I'm concerned, I'm indifferent. If the law is amended to reflect open publication, people would then have to make a determination whether they want to continue or even go into public service because their entire world is having to be exposed to the public, or that, yes, regardless, because the motives with which they go into public service is altruistic. And so it doesn't really matter whether their assets are made public or not. And I'm saying that as far as I'm concerned, I really don't have a stand, whichever way.
So you really don't have a stand. It basically means that, you have nothing to hide. You've declared your assets and you wouldn't have a problem, whether it's going to go public or be private. But do you agree with those who say that maybe that is exactly what we need to stem the tide of corruption, looting of the state coffers, so to speak?
You see, those comments, and I've been a member of parliament this is my second term. How do people loot the public purse? How do they do it? I've been in the Ministry of Energy for about a year. How do people loot?
How do you explain, especially when people don't? Some people may declare their assets, they don't declare their liabilities. That is one concern. And how do you explain it when people come that we know? And you see, that's the point. People will tell you that we know these people. We know what they have. Of course, maybe you don't know everything they have. Or these are people are even schooled with. All of a sudden, they go into politics, get this position, and they are putting up buildings that it would take you 20 years working and you wouldn't be able to build. Is that not a good way of assessing it? At least when it comes to tax, the taxman can look at you and say, if you are driving this Ferrari, you may have bought it at this price and that, and so you should pay this amount of tax. We can draw the lines, can't we?
It really is a question of choices, because I know one of my colleagues, okay, who in the last parliament, he didn't have any property in Accra. He used part of his rent advance to pay a deposit on some building that he subsequently finished paying through his ex-gratia. Others will use all their funds because they think their seat is unsafe to fund activities in their constituency that really is coming from their personal pockets to sustain their seats. And so if you make a comparison between the two persons, that one has been able to buy a building in wherever from his rent advance and also his allowances and some back pay and ex gratia that is paid to him. And you say that he's gone into politics to amass, in your words. What does it really mean? That the person didn't have a car before, but he's gone into public service, and the role that he's in requires that he be given an official vehicle, and the government procures a loan through a private bank, and the person purchases a Land Cruiser and is driving back and forth into his constituency to do public work that he's paying for. Of course, the state pays a portion of it, and that means that person has arrived or what? I'm not saying people don't do stuff, but I ask the question. The supposition is that everybody in public office is some kind of thief. And I'm saying that that broad stroke doesn't help the discourse, because as a matter of fact, it is not the case. That's not the point that I'm making. That's why I said to you that I'm really indifferent, okay, as to whether assets are declared publicly or not. My family would then have to take a decision whether, hey, you think that we ought to expose ourselves to the entirety of the Ghanaian public in this manner, then we can take the decision. But as far as I'm concerned, left to me alone, it's really not a big deal at all.
You brought in an issue that is tied to this, inextricably tied, ex gratia. And some people feel as well, just because you mentioned it, I probably wouldn't have brought it up. Some people feel, look, yes, the law says what it does in terms of Article 71 office holders, but is it high time we took a second look at this, especially in our economic situation? Because let me just give you the list. According to the Professor Ya Ntiamwa Bedu committee, this is what we're going to see at the end of, this was what was proposed at the end of 2020. The president would walk away after 4 years with 659,000 plus Ghana cedis. The vice president, 549,000. Let me just walk you through the list and pose the question. Then,
how much is this? Out of which, how much is his back pay?
Right, and that is another conversation altogether, because it is interesting how we can have someone go through an entire tenure with some proposals, and then at the end of the tenure, we're now fixing what the person should have got, and we're giving all this back pay. That is another problem on its own. But if you can address both when I'm just done with these. 549,000 plus for the vice president, Speaker of Parliament 488,000 plus, Cabinet Minister 464,000 plus, that is Cabinet Minister MP. Cabinet Minister non-MP 457,000 plus, Member of Parliament 390,000 plus, Member of the Council of State 366,000 plus. And we saw Togbe Afede returning his recently. Your reactions on the two fronts.
You see, I think that going forward, it's important that the terms and conditions of Article 71 office holders. And yesterday, I was on another platform with my good friend and brother, Sam George, and today I'm here with my brother, Alhassan. And the question was really whether that delay, in submitting the report in itself helps the discourse. And it helps, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't help the discourse on two levels. One, even the recipients themselves, including the members of parliament, of which I'm one, lose out because you are not compensated for the time value of the money that you lose for the period that you are being paid conditions of service that the previous parliament enjoyed. So it is in my interest that my actual terms and conditions are determined now for me to have the real value of the money rather than wait till 2024 when I take salary on account for 4 years and then I get to be paid a 10 or 11% incremental per year when public service, other public sector workers have enjoyed the full benefit of their annual increments and enjoy the full value of the money, as opposed to me, who at the end of the day is being shortchanged because I don't get to be compensated for the loss in value that I enjoy. Then again, it doesn't help the discourse because it is only 2 or 3 months or 4 months I hear this time around per year of service that is paid to you as ex gratia. But it is all lumped together as part of the terminal benefits that are paid to you, together with your terms and conditions of service, including the salary that has been determined by the committee and paid to you in bulk. And so you put out figures that you put out there without distinguishing the portion that actually is ex gratia and the portion that is legitimately due in terms of the remuneration of the people who are affected. But yes, then you create the impression that though people have taken 390,000. But if you do the math, you would see that out of that amount, it's only about 20% or so that actually constitutes ex gratia when and the remaining your actual earned salary that has been delayed for 4 years and being paid to you now. And so
even that 20,000, even that 20% you speak of, I mean, you put it in that light, but you know what it means to an ordinary Ghanaian, because if you consider averagely, even on single spine, what people are earning compared to what a member of parliament takes home, you speak of it as 20%. I'm not trying to downplay what you do.
Why don't you compare
but I'm simply saying that even that 20% you speak of, that is like a fortune, a life saving for someone else.
It's not a fortune at all. Okay, it's not. Now compare it with chief executives of SOEs, and then you will see that it pales into insignificance.
Another problem.
something we've decided to do. Salaries of other non-subvented organizations, top management, not even chief executive. I, as MP, take home 13,000 Ghana cedis, but I sat on the Ghana Gas Board, and managers were taking in excess of 25,000 cedis per month. What are we talking about? Yes, I appreciate that a broad category of Ghanaian workers as well don't earn that much salary. And so those ought to be addressed. No issues. But to say that you're doing those relativities, you're being completely unfair.
Thank you for your initial submission. Let me bring in Alhassan Suhuyini, Member of Parliament for Tamale North. Honorable Suhuyini, a very good morning to you. All right, we'll get Alhassan Suhuyini joining the conversation once more. I think I caught a bit of is it a snicker or a smile from you, Andrew, at the tail end. Just a quick one as well. I wanted to bring in Alhassan to share his thoughts on these, but before we go into Parliament, because once we get into Parliament, I wouldn't want to come out again. This bit about, and I'll talk about it as often as I can, a national cathedral. It's also brought, it stirred the hornet's nest. We're all talking about it. Seed money, relevance at this time, and of course the erroneous comments about it being, you know, the national mosque having been facilitated by any government, which Komorgan, the Ummah, the Muslim Ummah, has debunked, and that we shouldn't try to find equivalence in that regard. But as it stands now, I spoke to Dr. Kwame Asante, okay? He political scientist and head of the Center for European Studies this morning. And he said to me, look, if there is this hue and cry, which he sees, we might as well pause on the project. Is that a stance, considering timing and our economic situation, that you would support? Right before I go to Alhassan.
Not at all. because already huge sums of monies have been expended already. And you see, sometimes I think the modesty of His Excellency the President accounts for some of these challenges that we face, because I would have thought that this asset is not his personal property. And so making a provision for its entire construction in the budget of the Republic of Ghana wouldn't be far-fetched at all. However, His Excellency the President recognizes that, look, we are in some economic difficulty, okay, and that burdening the state's budget with the entire amount required for the funding of the project may not be the way to go. And so let the state support the private sector, that is the churches, individuals, and the Christian community in general, to put up this asset that is, for all intents and purposes, state property. Okay, I've heard people make sinister comments that this is a private pledge that the president made to his God. And so
is it not?
Find his own funding.
Is it not?
When he, but of course, free SHS is a private pledge that the president made to the people of Ghana.
No, it was a public pledge he made to the people of Ghana. Up until we were told about no, hold on, Andrew.
Allow me to answer the question.
Up until no, I'm just saying, and I'm saying it so you can clarify for me. Up until Akufo-Addo came into power, we did not know about this pledge of a national cathedral, did we?
What did you say?
I am saying that up until the president came into power, we did not know about this pledge of a national cathedral, this pledge he had made to God, did we?
Up until the president came into power, did you know about NAPCO?
We knew about the fact that there would be moves to create employment for the youth.
I'm asking you a specific question. Did you know about NAPCO?
And I'm saying, by extension, we knew that there would be measures to create jobs for the youth.
Let's not bastardize some of these things. Of course, we can agree to disagree. You may think that it is not worthy of any state involvement. I think that it is worthy of full state involvement. His Excellency the President thinks that, look, it may not be worthy of the state funding the entirety of it. Each of us is entitled to his view. Okay? But don't suggest to me that this is a property that His Excellency the President can will to his children upon his demise. Because that is not the case.
But is it a property that the Ghanaians want to be bequeathed to them?
Without due respect, I mean, if you allow me to make my point, you can ask me a follow-up question.
Go ahead.
I don't have a difficulty at all. His Excellency the President, with all due respect, is not going to will it or devise it to his family upon his demise. Okay? And so, this is a state asset. So let's look at it from that perspective. We can, like I said, disagree on funding sources and whether it is needed at this time. I think that it is 50 years too late. And so, yes, by all means, if we have to do it at this time, together with meeting other needs of the people of Ghana, we ought to do it. That's my position.
Okay. Can I come in now? I'm just looking at a message. Mo Ajay and Alhassan, my apologies, but because of the turbulence and you're joining us a bit tardily, but I'll give you ample time. Mo Ajay says, I am not a Christian and I don't support my taxes being used for a cathedral that will not give me any benefit in terms of my religion. That is on our thread. He just shared that. And there are Christians as well. And there are Christians as well who will tell you that I want things that will impact my pocket and what I'll eat, not a national cathedral.
People are opposed to free SHS. Okay, people are opposed to planting for food and jobs. People are opposed to NAPCO. People are opposed to all sorts of government policy that are implemented. And so if it is the case that you're suggesting that by virtue of the fact that some people are opposed to a certain policy decision, it should not be done, then I beg to say that no policy can ever be implemented. Because whatever decision that you take, there would necessarily be people who are opposed to it. But it's the duty of government, okay, which is given the mandate to govern within a certain time frame, to then make the decisions and live with the consequences thereof. I recall that when President Kufuor was putting up the Jubilee House facility, there was all sorts of hue and cry in this country. Unless, of course, you are a member of the Short Memory Association of this country who doesn't remember. People even suggested that we're going to use it.
Was that directed at me? Because I don't know if you're tagging others as having short memory. I don't think it's palatable to refer to me in that light.
Found that it wasn't needed. There were people who were hungry on the streets. Yes. I was sat in this country and people were paid huge sums of money for no work done. Yes, there were complaints equally. But is the Jubilee House worthy of the investment that was made in putting it up? Hasn't it served this country well post its completion? So yes, let's have the argument. I don't have a problem at all, okay? But let it not be said that it's as if to say somebody is doing something that is going to be to his personal benefit. And so he is by all means closing his eyes to do it against the will of the people of Ghana. I'm saying that people support the National Cathedral. I support it fully. I think that rather than even funding it partially by the state and the private sector actors, the state should fund it fully. So that
the state should fund it fully.
Absolutely. That is my view.
Right. Okay. Thanks. Hold it right there. Let me bring in Alhassan Suhuyini. Interesting thoughts. And I know you've been watching, you've been listening as well. Andrew Agyapa Mercer, your opposite number from Sekondi says, if it were left to him, the state should expend all the $350 million in these times to put up the National Cathedral. I mean, when I was talking about the Kufuor administration and the Jubilee House, we could also go back to the 60s and talk about the Akosombo Dam and how people said, oh, we don't have that much of a population, but today it serves the purpose. We can talk about the Tema motorway and same talk about it, but here we are. But
we later have the benefit of all these assets that were put up for the state.
Right.
You have actually even buttressed the point that I'm making.
No, I'm not contesting that. I'm just saying that it may not necessarily, because at least we know what those projects are in terms of the socioeconomic fabric of our country. But Alhassan Suhuyini, our assets declaration regime. Now we have a petition before SHRAJ in terms of maybe compelling those who have not done the right thing to do so. I know you've sat here on this show and told us that you have declared your assets. And then looking at what we're seeing, the National Cathedral, and what your colleague is saying, that left to him, look, forget all these comments that other people are making. Let's even pay all the $350 million by the state. Your quick take on that.
Well, thank you very much, Ben. Good morning. Good morning to my brother from Sekondi, Mercer, and good morning to our viewers. If you pardon me, I just wanted to make a comment on the discussion you had earlier in relation to salary arrears. That's how I choose to call it, the ex gratia. That the debate of ex gratia that is unending. I, in my view, think that I think I said it on your platform the last time, that the way to deal with this matter is actually to get to get the precedents that will come after, to ensure that they set up the committee of emoluments earlier and determine the conditions of service of parliamentarians and other Article 71 office holders. Why? Because to some extent there is a lot of confusion around it, and I believe that that will clear that misunderstanding. Look, for the 4 years that I am a member of Parliament, every year workers will get the opportunity to negotiate with government on their conditions of service, and then they will be they will get an increment of a sort, whether they appreciate the increment or not.
Anything between 4 and 7%, most likely under 10%.
Exactly, they do that. They get that every year, so they get that every year cumulatively for 4 years. a member of parliament, a member of the Article 71 office holder doesn't have that opportunity. And so as I serve as a member of parliament today, my conditions of service is dependent on the conditions of service that was determined for Article 71 office holders in the seventh parliament, and not in this parliament.
Why can't we remedy that so that we don't have this back pay, this end of term, and then we're now determining this on that?
That is why my view is that the precedents that will come maybe after, because President Akufo-Addo has already failed in that direction, must be compelled to set up the emoluments committee immediately they are sworn in and tax them to finish their work in, say, 3 or 2 months, so that people do not have to be paid on account. Because, like Mercer said, the time value of money is hardly imputed in the calculations when they are determining these salary areas that are paid to members of the Article 71 holders after 4 years of service. And I believe that's the way to clear that confusion. And you know, to the issue of what do you call it? To the issue of the cathedral. I really find it interesting that my brother thinks that the state should fund it fully. For me, we need to understand we have to put the discussion in context. Cathedrals were fashionable in the past when the church and state operated as one. And so if you look at cathedrals that have been built across the world, these were the times that such cathedrals were built. And it will be interesting to take note of even the locations of the cathedrals. And perhaps that has even informed the determination to locate our cathedral close to the State House and Parliament and the other state institutions. Because it was that relationship between state and church in those days that, led to the appetite to construct cathedrals, close to these state institutions. So I've heard people say that the cathedral couldn't have been sited anywhere better than where it is close to State House and all of that. It is true. If you look at the history of cathedrals, that was the overriding, reasoning. Now, many years down the line, you're asking yourself if it is still very, very relevant for the states to get involved in these things, because we have long gone past the relationship that existed between the state and church when they governed the state together. Again, let us take note that no cathedral has ever taken less than 10 years to construct. No cathedral has ever taken less than 10 years to construct. Now, you have a president who has made his personal pledge, did not disclose it to the people of Ghana during his campaigns, decided to disclose it after he was elected as president, and has committed that he will do it in less than 4 years. You are bound to have problems. Even the mighty nations with lots of resources did not use 10 years to build the cathedrals that they have. Now, my problem with the whole construction.
And Alhassan, I'm sorry to do this, but owing to when you were able to join the conversation, when we were able to get your feed, I'm going to give you some 2.5, 3 minutes more to just wrap up on this so we move on to the other bits. I respectfully have to do this because, I would have wanted a banter earlier, but the timing is also crucial. So please go ahead.
So my issue with the cathedral are 3. Lack of honesty, lack of transparency, and the illegal transfers of money to the construction site. 3. First of all, the lack of honesty is seen in the earlier assurances that this entire project was going to be privately funded, and that government was just providing land. Now, there is some level of dishonesty, even if government was only providing land, because remember, we made the point then that we were, as a state, pulling down 21 townhouses at Ridge, not at Kaswa, townhouses that judges occupied. That was cost to the state. We were relocating the passport office, and I understand it has cost us about 10 million Ghana cedis to do that. That's cost to the state, apart from the cost of the land. As we speak, we are in a tussle with the Bulgarian, the Malian embassy over where to site their, residence that was affected by this construction. I understand the government has so far given state land at airport for the construction of a new residence for the Malian, ambassador. That is cost to the state. But yes, despite all of these costs, they looked us in the face and told us that it was not going to cost the state beyond land and that it was going to be privately funded. Only for us to wake up and see releases of huge sums of money ranging from $25 million to $32 million and then 127 million Ghana cedis as seed capital. Now, that is some audacity to lie to us in the effort, in an effort to construct a house of God. It must take some kind of impudence to, start such a project for God with lack of transparency. Then my second issue is with the fact that this whole enterprise is witnessed in terms of the transfers with illegalities. The monies that I speak of were not budgeted for, have not been seen in any of our budgets. It was not disclosed in Parliament during budget estimates and consideration.
The Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, counters that. Speaking on Talking Point recently on the state broadcaster, he said it is not true that these have been made known at some point in parliamentary deliberations.
He cannot. He can say it. But the thing is about the facts. He should point to a page, an appendix, where it was stated that the state will fund the cathedral with about 200 million Ghana cedis seed money. Nowhere in the budget was it stated, not even in the priority projects. Meanwhile, the president tells us that this is the priority of priorities. It's not listed under the priority project. Yes, mention was made of government facilitating, the construction of a cathedral in a paragraph. But that is not how budgets are done. When you are going to expend money on an activity, after mention is made of it in a paragraph, there is a breakdown in the estimates of how much is going to be spent at what times. That is what our laws, direct.
So in factual terms, what you're saying is that the finance minister is throwing dust in our eyes. Is that what you're suggesting?
Absolutely. And again, this is about a conversation to construct the house of God. And the people who say they are, more pious than the Pope, even in doing this to celebrate God, do not have the presence of mind to be honest about their dealings.
Okay.
That for me is worrisome.
All right.
So these are the three things: the lack of transparency, the dishonesty with which they are going ahead with this project, and obviously the disrespect to the laws of the country in terms of how funds are managed.
All right.
Then you may want to add, the fourth one about even the timing of this project. The timing of this project. Like I said, no country, not even the mighty countries with economies blooming than ours, use less than 10 years to construct their cathedrals.
Okay. So the point has been made in that regard. Let's go into Parliament and its workings. A number of issues to look at.
If you permit me a second, you see, let's be honest with the facts. Okay, to suggest that the finance minister didn't indicate that government of Ghana was going to provide funding for this project is not accurate. The exact amount, yes, I concede, was not stated in the budget presentation that was made to Parliament. But the finance minister was categorical that beyond the land, government was going to provide seed money for the construction of the cathedral. And this is a matter of fact. So where is the dishonesty? Where is it? Let's not do this. Look, we can disagree, and I don't have a problem with people disagreeing, even on the quantum of money that the government is providing for the construction of the cathedral. But let not anybody suggest that somebody was dishonest in this matter, because the budget was clear that seed money beyond the land was going to provided for the construction of the cathedral.
All right.
It's a fact.
All right.
How much?
That's why I considered that the figure, how much, I do not recall having seen the exact amount in the budget. That's a consideration.
But let me remind you, if you do not recall, let me remind you. Let me help you remember that because no amount was even stated as seed capital, in Honorable Dominic Ayini's contribution to the budget debate, he requested the finance minister to be more detailed than just telling us that he will provide seed money for the cathedral. That is transparency. That is what our law says.
Look, I don't have a difficulty with you.
Okay, gentlemen,
not providing the actual amount that the state was going to contribute. I'm not going to argue with you on that.
Okay.
But to suggest that no mention of state funding was made, that is inaccurate. That's the point that I'm making.
All right. So I don't want too much of a trade-off. I think the positions are clear and your different takes are also crystal clear. Now, in a letter dated yesterday, the Director of Public Affairs of Parliament, Kate Addo, made us all aware of the Privileges Committee's decision to publish the summons to Member of Parliament for Domikwa Abenya, Sarah Adwoa Safo. And it makes mention of the fact that all means, official and unofficial, have been made to get her. And now publications are going to be made in the dailies and others to get her to attend to the summons of the Privileges Committee. Of course, she's not alone in there, having missed the stated 15 sittings. And this has the blessing of the Speaker of Parliament. We also have Member of Parliament for Asin Central, Kennedy Agyapa. And we also have Henry Quartey, Member of Parliament for Ayawaso Central and Greater Accra Regional Minister. I'll start with you, Andrew. When you look at how things have panned out, we had a discourse here, my colleague Blessed Suga, interacting with Sarah Adwoa Safo back then. She said she had not received any such summons. But now matters have come to a head. We've got to the tipping point. Should we have got here? And what proposal would you make to Sarah Adwoa Safo on the back of this latest effusion, if you like, from Parliament?
Well, yeah, thank you. I'm a member of the committee, and so I'm very much aware of what it is that transpired yesterday. You see, it's important for us to situate the issues in context. And to answer directly your question whether we should have gotten here, I don't think we should. Because, and I must add that Adwoa was my mate in law school as well. And so I know her very well. I've had a very personal relationship with her for a very long time.
Just to interject quickly, have you had the privilege of maybe speaking to her personally about some of these matters ahead of all this?
No, I have not.
Right.
I've not had a privilege of speaking to her, But you see, the Constitution is very clear, okay, as regards what it is that would amount to a member vacating his seat. And if you permit me, I'll just read for the benefit of our viewers. It says that a member of Parliament shall vacate his seat in Parliament, and for purpose of this specific matter, if he is absent without permission in writing of the Speaker, and he is unable to offer a reasonable explanation to the Parliamentary Committee on Privileges from 15 sittings of a meeting of Parliament during any period that Parliament has been summoned to meet and continues to meet. So clearly, prima facie, Adwoa has been absent for more than 15 sittings. Clearly, prima facie, the Speaker has confirmed that no permission has been given to Agyapa to absent herself from 15 sittings of Parliament. And so the next step really would be for her to offer a reasonable explanation to the committee why she has absented herself of more than 15 days sitting without the permission of the Speaker. That's the work that the committee is constitutionally bound to do. Now, if you look in our standing orders, especially in order 205, which deals with issue and service of summons, and for the benefit of those who are listening to us, if you permit me, an order to attend or to produce documents before a committee shall be notified by summons signed by the clerk of the House or of a committee and issued by the direction of the Speaker or the chairman of the committee, as the case may be. 2, the summons shall state the time when and the place where the person summoned is required to attend and the particular documents which is required to produce. 3, the summons shall be served on the person mentioned herein by delivering to him a copy thereof or by leaving it at his usual place of abode with some other person, or where this is not known, so there's an alternate, by publishing it in the press. What the committee's deliberation established as a matter of record, that the summons that were issued for her to appear to avail herself of the opportunity to provide the committee with some reasonable explanation as to why she has absented herself, was served to her through her officially registered communication channels with Parliament. That is to say, through her email and through her phone WhatsApp contact. Of course, it's also been served subsequently on her PA and at her office and also in her pigeonhole in Parliament. Now, post the interview that she granted to Joy FM was when the extension to her PA and also was done. And of course, the parliamentary service used some means to get to the source of how Joy FM or JoyNews got to interview Agyapa, and the committee sought to serve her through that same process. So clearly you see that from what it is that has transpired, all legitimate means of serving her has been effected by the committee, except the publication.
Right.
And indeed, the publication is not required if you are able to serve her through her last known place of abode and through some other person or through the communication channels that have already been established. But when we met yesterday, the consensus that was reached was that because this is a matter of grave consequences, if you like, it was important for us to exhaust, even though it wasn't required, the other methodology that the rules provide for service, that is by way of publication, to be effected before we can then proceed to determine.
So it is clear that you're going to use that, though it's not required. Though it's not required by law, you'll give her the benefit of the doubt, publish in the dailies
Absolutely.
as well. But what will be the consequence?
I must add that I was going to say to determine. The committee hasn't got any determinating role, save to say that she has to provide the reason that the committee may then determine whether her reason is reasonable or not. And so if she doesn't avail herself of that opportunity that the law affords her, then potentially the committee will just have to go back to Mr. Speaker and say that, well, the respondent did not appear to provide any reason to the committee. And I guess that would trigger what it is that would trigger pursuant to the constitutional provisions.
All right. So let's look at these two scenarios quickly so I can bring in Alhassan as well. I'm assuming, must she be here physically? Or is it that in the nature of, especially in the context of COVID-19 and everything we've seen, can this be held with her via, face, tools that we use, visual tools like, Zoom and others, Skype?
Yes,
Is that an avenue that can be used? And
yes, I can confirm to you that indeed yesterday the committee set up facilities to allow her appear virtually through the same, and the link to the Zoom meeting was conveyed, to my understanding, to her through the same channels that Joy FM conveyed your link for your Zoom meeting that you held was with her to her. And the meeting was set up, except that there was no respondent on the other side of the line. And so we had to, as it were, continue our deliberations without
Do you
her.
feel Sarah Adwoa-Safo is deliberately ignoring this summons by the Privileges Committee? And what would be the consequences if come July the 6th, she doesn't appear, whether virtually or physically? What will be the consequences? And do you feel she is deliberately doing this?
Well, I wouldn't proffer any comment on that because
There has been no response. You have claimed over time, over a period, months, that you've been trying to reach her and there's no response. So what is the conclusion there?
I'm saying to you that because I'm a member of the committee, I do not want to make any comment that may be prejudicial, okay, as to whether she's doing this deliberately or not, as you seeking to extract from me. I'm not in a position to say. But obviously, we've seen her speak publicly through with a media house, in fact, this particular media house. And so I would hope that she would avail herself of the opportunity that the Constitution affords her, because really is a burden that is imposed on her, because only she is the one who knows what it is that informed her decision, her being absent without permission. And her explanation is what it is that she has to offer to the committee, so that the committee can make a determination whether it's reasonable or not. And so
we can talk about the reasonableness or otherwise of it, because it's a bipartisan committee, but how does your party, the MPP, feel about this entire development and looking at the impact it has had on the party? How do you feel about it?
The committee that I sit on is not a political party committee. It's a committee of parliament. And my duty as a member of the committee...
No, I'm not referring to the committee here. I'm referring to you and your membership, the majority in parliament.
My view as a member of the New Patriotic Party doesn't matter. It is the official position of the party that will be relevant for any question relating to how the party feels. And I don't think that I'm appropriately clothed with authority to speak.
So has maybe to clarify, Andrew, I've heard a number of people from the majority side, including the majority leader, express their opinions on Sarah Adwoa-Safo. What I'm asking is that officially, so to speak, has there been any communication on Adwoa-Safo as far as the MPP is concerned, membership in parliament?
Not to my knowledge. Not to my knowledge. But like I said, I'm a member of the committee. And so I ought to wear the hat of an independent, if you like, member of the committee.
Point made, and I can understand that.
And my hope is purely as a result of the fact that, like I said, Adwoa and I were in law school together. And so I think that if you look at the tenor of the letter of the Constitution, her failure to offer that reasonable explanation would automatically amount to her losing or vacating her seat. And so I think that this is an opportunity that she shouldn't miss, and that she should take advantage of it and appear before the committee.
Okay, and Andrew, in some 30 seconds, I want you to do this final bit on this subject. The point is, you have 3 members of parliament who are going to have to come face to face with the Privileges Committee. And if some say they'll face the Privileges Committee and then come to the plenary, others say it will end at whatever decision the Privileges Committee adopts, and then the Speaker will pronounce on it. But you could lose 3 members of parliament. I mean, are you looking forward to that? How serious could that be for the NPP, especially considering the 8th parliament and the structure it has?
I'm not in a position to state whether we could lose 3 members or not. I mean, this is a procedure that the Constitution has afforded members who prima facie have breached two of the conditions, okay, which is to say absenting themselves for 15 days without the permission of the Speaker. The Constitution then says that when people find themselves in that situation, they should proffer their explanation to the committee. They have not proffered their explanations to the committee as far as I'm concerned. And so how anybody concludes that we could lose 3, I do not know. And so
the point is it can swing this way or that. That's why I am using the conditional could. No one is saying they will. It is conditional could. And if that hypothetically were to happen, I mean, what would be the impact? But I think you want to stay away from, venturing into that terrain. So it's understandable. Let me come to Alhassan.
Of course, you shouldn't expect that I will stay away from venturing into that space that you are inviting me into. No?
Well, it is my duty to invite you there. And it depends on you whether I will bring you to the water. You decide whether you will drink.
Very well. Very well.
All right. Alhassan, over to you. I mean, they could lose 3 members of parliament, your opposition in parliament. That would be good news for you, the NDC, right?
Well, it depends. I think that it will also be good news for the people of Ghana, because then it will now become very difficult for them to engage in shenanigans to reduce our numbers so that they can impose some draconian policies, on the people of Ghana. But if you look at the Agyapa case generally, on a lighter note, it could pass as evidence of how hard things are to have a minister of state and a member of parliament just run abroad to seek greener pastures, even though we know that she's not there for greener pastures. But it could, on a lighter note, pass as the evidence of how things are really hard in this country. Now, you know my position already on Agyapa. I've said it several times on your platform. If His Excellency President Akufo-Addo does not take care, he will go down into history as one president who was never responsible for anything, never, ever acted responsibly, in any matter. I mean, he picks substandard ministers of state, and he is not responsible for, that choice. Parliament is accused for approving, the substandard ministers that he chooses. He introduces draconian and nebulous taxes, and he is not held responsible for introducing those taxes. Parliament is accused for allowing the tax to be approved. I mean, he promised to fight corruption and even threatened that people in his government who dare come in to make money will be dealt with. And corruption is all over the place. And state institutions mandated to fight corruption are blamed for that. And he is not held responsible for it at all. I mean, heck, his minister goes AWOL, Minister of State goes AWOL, and he's unable to as much as even just dismiss her. And Parliament is worrying itself to take that responsibility, for him and on behalf of the people of Ghana. Isn't that just a shame? And so I'm saying that, for me, the first thing that should happen is that the leader of the executive arm of government must act responsibly. In this case, he must dismiss Sarah Agyapa as Minister of State. Then Parliament will also now deal with her absence in Parliament. I think that we have pampered our president for far too long. It is time that he is held responsible for at least one thing, at least for the appointee that he put in charge of the Ministry of Women and affairs.
Just to say, some of your own membership have said that we ought to tread cautiously, because you never know when you'll be caught in the same net, and that you as members of parliament, if you proceed with these 3, you could be shooting yourselves in the foot. But is this a glorious opportunity for parliament to bring itself above the board and show that for once, you can deal with your own and that the law must bite. What is your take?
My take is simple. I mean, yes, Parliament must take every opportunity, especially in this current Parliament, to build itself up, to improve upon how it does things. We may never get this opportunity again. And that is why sometimes I get deeply worried when we still allow the executive to, have its way in a Parliament that is so equal. I mean, the worst that can happen after this may be a government in power having less numbers in Parliament. But this opportunity where we are equal, the two parties are equal, may not come again. And it is so glorious that we should take advantage to use these numbers to build Parliament in such a way that it can, withstand other things that we may not have imagined in future. That is what many countries, around the world have done, and it has served them well. I think this is how.
If these three MPs are punished,
having said that, Ben,
right.
Having said that, I do not think that, like I said the last time I was on your show, we should answer the wrong questions. I think that the questions must be right, so that we can provide right answers to those questions.
And what are the right questions?
That will then serve as, a reference point moving forward. Because in my view, the two members of Parliament should be treated just the way the law says they should be treated. The laws and outstanding of others. I believe that members of the committee will not be partisan. They will keep an open mind, listen to the two members of Parliament, and come to a conclusion that is based on their conscience, that their reasons are either, convincing or not, and make a recommendation that is, forward-looking, that the plenary can consider. But in the case of Adwoa Safo, it's a wrong question for Parliament to answer, in my view. I am of the view, clearly, that we need to get our president to, for once, act responsibly. What has Adwoa Safo got on the president that we don't know?
And since we do not know, we cannot insinuate either. So right, we don't know either, so we cannot. We cannot insinuate. Alhassan Suhuyini, when she spoke to Blessed Soga, I remember she categorically stated that.
Is it not discomforting? Is it not discomforting that a minister of state, a cabinet minister for that matter, leaves this country and everything shows that she cannot be contacted by anybody? Because otherwise, even Parliament would have been able to reach her. The committee would have been able to reach her.
She has said,
and yet, the president cannot issue a letter to say he has dismissed this minister of state.
To wrap up this end of the conversation, she has stated that yes, she as a minister, she would want to come back and assume her position again, that she is the substantive minister, though we know Cecilia Abnadapa is acting in her stead, and that the only person who can dismiss her is the president, and that he is aware of her circumstances. So since you are not aware of her circumstances, I would suggest that we move on from there.
You can't move on. Look, you can't move on.
Why can't we move on? What is there to say?
Look, the reference to
why you know what she has on the
let me hear Andrew.
The reference to Cecilia Abnadapa that the host just made, without further informing the public that indeed that notice that came indicated that Adwoa Safo's leave has been extended. It's mischievous.
My goodness.
So you want me to make every point? Okay. So Andrew. Fair point. Fair point you've made. Andrew,
she is actually on leave, and you know as a matter of fact.
Okay, so I didn't think that would be a problem, because that is a fact that everybody knows. But
Madame Cecilia Abnadapa is acting without further informing the public that Adwoa Safo per the letter that was issued by Eugene Ayin on 6 October 2021, that her leave has been extended for personal reasons. You should know that.
Okay, so you want me to go into all that detail? Fine. You put the details out there. Thank you very much, Andrew.
Ben, but you see...
No, it's fine. It's fine. We don't need to belabor the point. I mean...
No, we do.
With time, things will fall in their proper places. I don't think we need to belabor the point on this one.
Just one point on this. Right. How do you justify a minister on leave in perpetuity for personal reasons when that minister comes on TV and tells us that she's taking care of her children? God, Ben, how many ministers of state have family issues that they are dealing with, even personal issues that they are dealing with, but still make time to serve the state because they are responsible to the state? If their condition gets to a point where they can no longer be available
at the time that you were making your initial allegation,
president,
at the time you were making your initial allegation, you knew that there was an opportunity for you to shift the goalpost.
Why will the president still keep such a minister at post? Why?
All right, so gentlemen, thank you. If we continue on this tangent, we'll never end
your family needs,
this section of the conversation.
Alhassan,
the truth of the matter is that I do not know the circumstances that.
Gentlemen, do I have to mute your microphone?
Is there a good reason enough that you should justify?
I don't have a problem.
Put your credibility on the line. If you know what Agyapa has on the president, let us know. You see, I won't even glorify this statement with a response because obviously you are responding though.
Out there. No, of course I won't. But see, the fact is this. Okay, the fact is this. Agyapa duly applied for and was granted leave. Fact. Agyapa subsequently applied for an extension of a leave, which was granted by His Excellency the President. Fact. And so you can make all
leave in perpetuity. Even when she was asked when she would return,
you see, we can. I have a difficulty with a long absence, but the truth then also is that I do not know the circumstances that she finds herself in today.
So there's nobody in the MPP today that the president can appoint to take that responsibility.
Okay, so that
somebody is acting in her stead, no?
Acting.
But
while she has a responsibility towards her substantive ministry. So among MPP members, there's nobody that can take up that role.
You see,
while she attends to her emergency.
There are several people who can take up that role.
I thought you said you had the men and women.
Of course, we have plenty of men and women that you
and one woman is holding all of you, including the president, to ransom.
Nobody is holding anybody to ransom. You can make your own conjectures, no issues. But I'm saying that the situation that she finds herself in, I don't know. But if it is such that she ought to be permitted room for her to deal with those issues, that is exactly what.
All right. Let's put a full stop. Let's put a full stop to.
Should that be at the expense of the state?
Let's put a full stop to the conversation
because she needs to attend to her personal needs.
Alhassan and Andrew, thank you very much. For a moment, I thought maybe one of you wanted to take over and host the show, but I still have to do this. As we wrap the conversation, two quick matters I'll bring up, and this is so. For both of you, I'll give you 2 minutes maximum. If you exhaust the 2 minutes, I mean, don't blame me on this one. The 2 minutes I'm giving you to reflect on the Kumasi Islamic Senior High and the incident which has now led to 3 police officers being interdicted, so to speak, and our Parliament asking for, an explanation on the back of this development. I'll start with you, Alhassan, 2 minutes each. Your quick take on that, and we'll be wrapping the conversation.
I think the use of brute force by the police has become very, very worrisome in recent times. And there is need for all of us to be concerned. And that is why, I am very happy that Speaker Bagbin yesterday directed that the Committee of Interior looks into the matter seriously. Because if you listen to the stories from the secondary school, it just beats your imagination how anybody trained to provide internal security will be that callous and reckless, especially towards unarmed, teenagers, because many of these girls, they are teenagers. I mean, I understand they simply gathered in front of on the road and demonstrating their unhappiness about speeding vehicles that, cause accidents at the entrance. And even when the police arrived, according to the reports, they dispersed, they ran, and they chased them, some into the washroom. I mean, what kind of training did these people in uniform get to engage in such barbaric behavior?
Right.
So I think that we must ensure that the committee does a thorough job, looking at recruitment, looking at training, and using this case as, if you like, a galvanizing case to look at all the other brutalities that policemen have meted out to people, unfortunately, across the country. It is becoming one too many, and the IGP must set up.
All right. For you, Andrew, quick take.
Well, to a large extent, I agree with the sentiments that have been shared by my colleague, Alhassan Suhuyini. I mean, I know that students can sometimes be overzealous, and act in a manner that is untoward. But the high-handedness, I mean, secondary school students, mostly girls, being, as it were, pepper sprayed by the police. It's unfortunate, and I think that we should not mince words in condemning the police for their high-handedness, albeit, suggestion is being put out there that they were responding primarily to some pelting of stones.
I mean, but you look at equivalence, even in the law, in respect of the police. People are throwing stones and you are firing, live bullets, albeit in the air.
Well, it's not established that live bullets were fired, okay?
Well, they got the shells. I mean, they got the shells on the ground. And I agree with you. Maybe the committee must go into it.
I mean, let the committee go into it and then furnish us with whatever it is that they find. It will be useful. I guess that the IGP step that he's taking also ought to be commended. I think that we should go beyond that and establish the fact, let us know the punitive measures that he's taking. And of course, as has been suggested by Alhassan, and I share those sentiments, reorient the police to handle these crowd control measures in a much more civil and less confrontational manner than we've seen in the recent past.
And Andrew, let me just sneak in this bit. You will have the final word on the show in a minute or two if you can manage it. Fuel prices are going up again. We hear that as of this weekend, maybe Friday, Saturday, we'll see another increment. Some say this is stifling. And the GPRTU has responded. I think it was Ibor Abbas that I heard speaking on the matter. And he is saying that the GPRTU, for the GPRTU, an increase in fares is inevitable. It is bound to happen. It will happen. That is what they are saying. But if you consider that, another increment and another jump in transport fares, I mean, you are Deputy Minister of Energy. How does that reflect on you?
Well, of course. I mean, so long as we practice the policy of focused recovery that was introduced in 2015, where the state decided that, look, continuous subsidy of petroleum products, which then led to huge sums of money accumulating as debt, was going to be discontinued, and that we're going to put in place this bi-weekly pricing window to ensure that whatever cost that is incurred, primarily by the BIDEX who import these products and sell to the ultimate consumer, would be determined on that basis. And so long as the prices of petroleum products continue to rise on the back mainly of the Ukraine-Russian war, unfortunately, we would continue to see the prices at the pump rising. Okay, I know that some engagements were held 2-3 months ago, where government then reviewed by reducing some of the margins that were on petroleum products. Of course, calls were made at a time for some taxes to be reviewed. The finance ministry came out to indicate that, well, reviewing those taxes downwards, as the calls were suggesting, would have huge impact on the revenues of the state, and that those reductions in themselves would not impact positively the pockets of the consumers, but the impact on the state coffers was huge. Okay, and so that conversation could not be entertained at the time. But I know that the window is not closed. Government keeps monitoring the space, and as and when it becomes necessary to introduce some measures that will provide some relief, that will be done indeed. But for the intervention that the Ministry of Energy engaged the Bank of Ghana, which then agreed to provide some FX market for the buy-decks who then purchase these products, I'm sure that the prices would have been higher than we've seen on the pumps at the pumps today. Indeed, if you look across the world, except in countries such as Nigeria and other places where the state subsidizes petroleum products by a large margin, which then has led to shortages that you see in those countries, because, of course, the subsidies come at a huge cost to the state, and they may not readily have the resources to purchase the products as and when the consumers need them. Okay, across the world, wherever that fuel prices are consumed, you see the prices at the pumps rising astronomically.
It depends on the level of rising. I mean, I always go back to the Sierra Leonean example. They don't produce oil in the quantities that we would think of. They in fact don't. But they found a way of managing the situation. When you look at West African neighbors, you would realize that we are very close to the highest price, if not the highest, and that some people say is a great cause for worry. So you may talk about the fact that there are increments across the board, but the question is by how much, especially as an oil producing country. If you look at the percentage of increments in 2022 alone, I mean, on the basis of previous figures, you would realize that we're paying what, 5 point something, 6, and now people are paying over 10 cedis, now edging towards 11, not to talk of diesel. I don't know whether what you're saying, covers all of that.
Well, I agree. And of course, if you compare 2011, 2012, 2021, 2022 figures, you will see a marked difference in those variables. And so the question really is, taxes haven't increased, okay? No additional taxes have been introduced within the period that you make reference to. But the prices have kept moving upwards. And clearly that is a function of, one, the price of the commodity, and two, the Forex differential. And I'm saying that the Forex differential has, to a large extent, been brought under some control by the introduction of the Forex market for IDEX who import the product. Okay, so some government action has been taken in that regard. We may argue that that may not be sufficient, having regard to the fact that the price keeps increasing. And so question then is, what is the next item to touch? Because the commodity price you cannot touch. The exchange rate for that segment of the market has been brought under some control. And so the next item that potentially may be subject to change is the taxation component. Okay, and I'm saying that that taxation component, even if you take off some handles, and at the time the suggestion was for the special petroleum tax and a few others to be reviewed. If even you reduce those ones, okay, the impact at the pump is not significant. but the impact on the exchequer, which is the general volumes of revenue that comes to the state to meet the budget estimates that have been approved by Parliament, is impacted significantly. And so then that would have consequences on the ability of government to meet the expenditure needs of the people as well, the goods and services, the development that we all are asking for, the wages and salaries of public service, public sector workers and all that. And so I'm saying that there has to be a balance.
But the wages and salaries have not changed. I mean, these commodities you speak of have not.
I agree. No doubt at all. I mean, I'm saying that that balancing act has to be had. That conversation has to be had. And I said at the very outset that as far as I'm concerned, the window is not closed. The Ministry of Finance should be open to a conversation that then makes a determination as to whether some taxes ought to be touched, because the forex and the commodity essentially have been dealt with, or there's no elasticity there, if you like. And what will be the consequences on the revenue? And Ghanaians then ought to, as a matter of consequence, then be in the know that those reductions in the revenue will have consequences that we all ought to be prepared.
Let me give the last few minutes as we hit the hour of 9 to Alhassan. Alhassan, you can share your thoughts on this as well as we wrap. Do we have Alhassan Suhuyini? Hello? All right. So we've lost Alhassan Suhuyini, Member of Parliament, Tamale North.
The God of the National Cathedral didn't want him to come and play his usual mischief with petroleum pricing, and so it's taking him off. But
the God of the National Cathedral didn't want.
But it's important. It's important, if you give me the last word, that yes, we would have views that are shared by our opponents. But like I keep saying, it was for a good reason that the Mahama administration decided to introduce the policy that it did. And so whatever conversations that we're having on the subject matter of petroleum prices should be situated in the context of the reality of what petroleum pricing is and the extent with which government can actually influence the prices. The only significant way is either to reduce the taxes or to provide some subsidy. And the question is, are we as a country in a position to make those inputs to ensure that prices are brought within the barrier that we may all consider reasonable?
Questions for all of us to ponder. Very grateful for your time, Andrew Agyapa Mercer, Member of Parliament for Sekondi. Thank you so much for joining.